Well, hey, long time no see. Guys and girls and everything in between, I am on a classical saxophone arc right now. A couple months ago, I played the Carnival of Venice at Clovis North. And it just totally reminded me all over again why I fell in love with saxophone in the first place. And for today's video, I have a real treat for you because there are few classical saxophonists in America that are on the level of the great Professor Zachary Shemon. Professor Zachary Shemon has one of the best classical alto sounds I have ever heard in person. It is not just me who has said this. I have several friends who have said the same thing. Every summer in June, he hosts the Kansas City Saxophone Workshop. 3 years ago, he asked me to be part of the faculty and I loved it. And next month, June 22nd through the 26th, we're doing it all over again. This is absolutely my favorite time of the year. There's an incredible saxophone faculty. You have Dr. Schultz. And also on faculty this year again is going to be the legendary Chad Lilly. All day, each day, there are master classes, private lessons, clinics, hangs, Q&As, and concerts. If you'd like to be a part of this summer's Kansas City Saxophone Workshop, I have a special link to it in the description below that will give you an automatic $100 discount. The deadline to register is June 6th, so hurry. Please join us this year. I can't wait to see you there. All right, that's enough of me talking. Here's a lesson that I recorded from last year's Kansas City Saxophone Workshop with the great Professor Zachary Shemon himself. In it, we talk about classical saxophone vibrato philosophy, double tonguing, and getting a cleaner technique, and just so much more. Thank you, Professor Shemon. Let's get on to the free classical saxophone lesson. Wow, that's so clear. I wish you guys were here in person. It's just the most clear sound I've ever heard. What kind of equipment do you have going on here?
Yeah, this is a Selmer Supreme that I got a couple years ago, and it was overhauled shortly after by the great Will Peak from Peak Performance Woodwinds. He's optimized this saxophone with about 5 or 6 different types of pads, and how quiet it is.
Wow, it's super quiet.
Yeah.
It's these little guys you got there.
Yeah, those are my palm key risers, made from Instamorph. Give credit to Will for those as well, because he customized them to my hands, so they fit. I have really big hands. You can see I have
Dang, holy crap.
so the palm keys come right to me. Yep.
Yeah. How does it feel that a middle C sharp so in tune?
I know, it's amazing. I played on horns previously, and C sharp's notoriously so flat, and so I'd always have to do like put down a bunch of extra keys to vent it, get it in tune.
Yeah, my Yamaha could never.
This horn's just in tune.
Yeah, that's crazy. I know everyone in the comments is gonna ask what this is.
This?
Uh-huh.
Oh, this is a mute. Also, Peak Performance Woodwind. This is a prototype. I always kind of liked having the felt on the outside, just because I felt like it kind of warmed up the sound. Maybe it's in my head.
Beautiful. Awesome. Professor Shemon.
Nathan.
Yeah, thanks for doing this.
Man, it's great to have you here this week.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. What an honor.
Yeah.
So as far as vibrato goes, do you have any tips on that?
One thing we can think about as saxophonists is modeling our vibrato after other instruments like flute or violin or voice. And so on saxophone, we have to find ways to increase the width of our vibrato without a timbral shift. My goal when I'm working on it, when I'm practicing vibrato, is to find as much flexibility above and below that pitch center without my timbre changing. Now, inevitably it's going to change a little bit, but my goal is to find flexibility without that timbral shift. So. Spinning quality by the end. My goal is to find this elusive spin, this spinning quality. Can't quite put a finger on what that is, but spin usually means that we have a roundness to the vibrato, and it just has this. You ever hear a player and it sounds like wah wah wah? Yeah. You hear a player and it sounds like wah 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 wah, like you hear every vibration of vibrato. Spin is when we lose that, and it's just got this effervescent quality, and it's hard to put a finger on what it is, and so it makes it hard to work on as well. But what I'm listening for is I can demonstrate what it would sound like if I didn't have that spinning quality. So sometimes my vibrato will sound a little buzzy on the top end where the reed will pinch off.
That's familiar.
You hear that reedy quality?
Yeah.
And so oftentimes teachers will say, you're biting, and you need to drop the jaw or something along those lines. But there's other ways around that. So that reedy quality that you're hearing, if you were to analyze the sound, it's a really high partial, and that's why it sticks out. And so oftentimes my job in orchestra or in saxophone quartet is to blend. And so I avoid introducing that reedy quality because then I won't blend anymore, because you're going to hear that upper partial, that upper frequency in the sound. And the same applies for vibrato. So when I'm working on vibrato, I'm trying to increase jaw pressure to bring the pitch up as much as possible, but before I hit that threshold where the reed pinches off on the mouthpiece. So do you hear how I stop short of that threshold?
Yeah.
So I'm still able to get a vibrato, but without introducing that buzz.
Yeah.
On the bottom end, the danger would be that I drop jaw pressure to the point where I get an airy quality to the sound. That airy quality is not something that's desirable in a context where you're trying to blend.
Right.
So when I'm working on vibrato, I'm trying to find that threshold of dropping my jaw or using less jaw pressure, but stopping just short of the point where I introduce airiness into the sound, and then increasing jaw pressure, but stopping short of that threshold where the reed is buzzing. And if I demonstrate that,
I wish you guys were here to hear what I just heard. It's just so pure. That's crazy. I want to play classical sax right now.
So the next step then is to apply that to the rest of the saxophone. So I chose a really flattering note, my tuning note, my octave F sharp. It's a nice flexible note, and it's relatively easy to get flexibility on that note without a timbral shift. But that becomes the model then for the rest of the horn. So as I work my way up into the palm keys, or I work my way into the low register, that's the ideal I'm chasing, even if it's not possible.
Okay. Could we hear you demonstrate that on like a palm key note? It's a lot of control. Wow. Dang.
Yeah, so let's talk about some exercises that you can start with if you're learning how to double tongue for the first time. So I think the starting point is actually to start away from the saxophone and come up with some syllables that you can use that will produce clarity in your double tongue without it getting heavy. And I think that's the key. So balancing clarity with lightness. Because if we're too heavy with the double tongue, we can get bogged down. So a starting point would be to use the syllables ta and ka. Ta being the syllable that we would normally use to articulate, ka being the second articulation in the double tongue. So if you were to say taka taka ta, as opposed to how we would normally articulate ta 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 ta. So taka taka ta is the starting point, but that's relatively heavy. So to go a little bit lighter than that, I would think the syllables da and ga, da ga da ga da, da ga da ga da, da ga da ga da. And you can hear taka taka ta. I get bogged down a little bit versus da-ga-da-ga-da, 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 da-ga-da-ga-da. It kind of rolls off your tongue. But on saxophone playing, even that ga syllable is going to be a bit heavy sounding, and it's going to completely stop the airstream, and then you have to start the airstream again. So a tip for super light double tonguing would be to find an even lighter syllable than ga. So if we go from ka being the heaviest, ga being even lighter, and then a syllable that's somewhere between ga and ya. So I'm going to try to say a syllable that to confuse you. So tell me if I'm saying ga or ya. Ga.
I don't know.
Ga, ga, ga. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So the idea being, if this is my tongue and this is the roof of my mouth, ta ka is hitting pretty hard. Da ga is hitting the roof of the mouth gently. Da ga, I'm getting about 99% of the way towards closing off the airstream, but not 100% of the way. So it's disrupting the airstream, but it's not completely stopping the air, so then we don't have to start the air again.
Sure.
So that, in my opinion, is the key to a super light double tongue, is finding a syllable that is light and is fluid. Now to get into some exercises that you can use to just get your double tongue started. I would recommend starting on the neck for a couple of reasons. One is you can easily produce a sound on the neck. It's very responsive, and also there's a lack of resistance on the neck that makes it favorable for double tonguing and starting these exercises. So let me demonstrate the three syllables that I was saying: taka taka ta, da ga da, and then da ga da, which is that somewhere between ga and ya.
Sure.
Here's the taka taka ta.
That's
you can
me.
hear that's pretty heavy.
That's me right there. That's me.
Now here's da ga da. Not bad, right?
Sure.
Now if I want to go even lighter, da ga da, da ga da, da ga da, da ga da. If you just disrupt the airstream 90%, 95%, it's enough to fool the ear into thinking that it's a true articulation, that the air is stopping, especially if we go fast enough. So. So if you listen closely,
Very light.
is there an articulation or is there not? I'm trying to deceive you a bit. That's an exercise I do to try to challenge myself to get as light as humanly possible with the double tongue. The other tip I have for when you're starting out, it's very common when you're starting out to have a heavy double tongue, and we'll get bogged down with it. So ta ka ta ka ta, the ka syllable, the second syllable, will have a delayed response. So we'll get okay. So in order to even that out, we'll practice it forwards and backwards. So instead of just da ga da ga da, we'll do da ga da ga da, ga da ga da ga, da ga da ga da, ga da ga da ga, forward and backwards. So here's da ga da ga da, ga da ga da ga. And when you're starting out, it might sound like this. That's okay. Over time, you'll learn how to adjust so that it's more even, but you want to be listening for evening that out. time you can add more notes to it. So I imagine that exercise being in 2/4, 1 E and a 2, 1 E and a 2. So da-ga-da-ga-da, da-ga-da-ga-da, ga-da-ga-da-ga, da-ga-da-ga-da, ga-da-ga-da-ga. If I add a beat to it, it becomes 3/4. So 1 E and a 2 E and a 3, 1 E and a 2 E and a 3, da-ga-da-ga-da-ga-da-ga-da, ga-da-ga-da-ga-da-ga-da, and I'm still doing it forward and backward.
Wow.
Okay. Now I go to 4/4, da-ga-da-ga-da-ga-da-ga-da-ga-da, ga-da-ga-da-ga-da-ga-da-ga-da, still forward and backward. And so that process from the starting point of just saying the syllables to that 4/4 exercise that I just did, that could take months. Like that could be a good summer project for you.
Wow.
A good goal might be in 2 to 3 months to get to that point where you can play 3 beats or 4 beats straight of double tonguing. I would also recommend having a metronome handy just so that you can gauge your progress with it. So we can use the metronome sort of the same way we would use when you go to the gym and you're lifting weights and you keep track of how much weight you're lifting. Sometimes, you know, if you didn't know how much you're weightlifting and you added 5 pounds, you couldn't tell the difference. Yeah. But you know now that you've made progress. And the same thing with the metronome. If you see that the metronome is 5 clicks faster than it was last week, you know you're making progress, and that's encouraging.
That is encouraging. Wow, I feel encouraged.
And then the next step would be to put the neck on the saxophone and apply what we just did. So I was just practicing on the neck, so if I play that same note.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
The next step is to coordinate the fingers and the tongue. Let's try this exercise. And again, you can do this with the metronome, but I started by starting with the fingers, isolating the fingers, then isolating the tongue, and then combining the two.
Okay.
So, fingers, tongue, combine. And then we can keep going and we can create longer exercises. So.
Yeah.
A big part of my job is learning new music, and it's a big part of the life of a saxophonist is to play new music. So when I see a new piece of music, my goal is to make as few mistakes in the learning process as possible early on so that I'm not ingraining those mistakes. Sure. And so my approach is to just take it super, super slow. So whatever the tempo is, as a starting point, I'll start it at half tempo. And my goal would be, even the first time I read it, I want to get the right notes and the right rhythms and even the right articulation and the right dynamics and all the information on the page. I want to be able to execute that, even if the tempo is way under, even if it's half tempo or a third of tempo. The goal then is to accumulate repetitions where you're not ingraining mistakes. You know, sometimes we have goals of, I want to get it to a certain tempo by a certain date. And unfortunately, life isn't always like that.
Sure.
So a philosophy that I've adopted as a musician and as a teacher is to focus on the process, meaning that I'm going to dedicate a certain amount of time towards the process every day, and the result is kind of out of my control. The things that are in my control would be how much time I'm practicing and how much time I'm spending on a certain passage, and am I using a metronome, those sorts of things. But what's out of my control is how quickly I might progress that passage or that lick up to tempo. You know, let's say the written tempo is 120 beats per minute, and today I just can't get it past 100. Oftentimes you'll put it away for 2 days, and then 2 days later all of a sudden you can play it at 100. But that's only if you follow that process of not going faster than you're ready to go today.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So if you practice with rhythms, altering the rhythms, at what stage do you do it? Do you do it right off the bat, like day one, or after you've done it slow for a while?
So I think you're talking about practice rhythms where you might take a passage that would otherwise be just straight 16th notes, and turning that rhythm into a dotted rhythm, like a dotted 16th, 32nd, or flip those 32nd, dotted 16th, or for example, 8th note and then 3 16th note triplets. So just to demonstrate what that would be, we would play it. Or I think many people use these practice rhythms for different reasons. I can tell you my philosophy on it. So when we do that dotted rhythm, what that does is you get intervals that are fast and you get intervals that are slow. And the goal of the intervals that are fast is to develop the neuromuscular connection. So that means that connecting your brain to your fingers so that your fingers are doing what your brain is telling it to do, which is to move fast. But then the slow intervals allow the brain time to catch up.
Okay.
What I like about the 8th and 3 triplets version is if I go from 16th notes to that practice rhythm, I get a break on every downbeat, and then I get 4 quick notes, and then another break, and then 4 quick notes. And it places the long note on downbeats where naturally we might want to play with the tenuto in the music. So if the passage is 16th notes, if I keep that same tempo and put a long note on the downbeats, now as I speed it up, I'm still mentally thinking about those downbeats. So I'm thinking about G, a bunch of notes D, a bunch of notes A, a bunch of notes D, a bunch of notes G. I'm kind of connecting from one downbeat to the next. And then from there, I go from feeling it as quarter notes to half notes.
Okay. Speed D.
As I go to that faster tempo when I'm playing 32nd notes, I'm no longer thinking about note, 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 note. I'm not thinking in a digital way. With that kind of intensity, I'm thinking more fluid, like I'm trying to keep my hand relaxed and fluid, less digital and precise. Thinking about just smooth connections, because oftentimes music is that way. So tying this back to the De Crook passage, if I think too digital, it can sound, I think, too intense for the character of the music. So the third movement of the De Crook is supposed to sound like a spinning wheel, like it should have this spinning quality. And if I play too digitally,
We should make that thing. That's awesome.
don't me do another one of those.
I was sure if you want. It sounds like guitar, you know.
Yeah.
Wow.
But really, I want it to be spinning and relaxed and easy.
Yeah.
And after I did that, like I feel myself getting a little amped up, you know.
Yeah,
like I feel my heart rate increasing
I'm
and
amped up.
my blood pressure increasing, and like I don't want that feeling when I'm performing anything, let alone like this spinning song. That should just feel easy.
Sure.
So I'm thinking about keeping my fingers and my hands as relaxed as possible.
That is all the questions I have for this hour. I'm sure I'll have a million more. So thank you so much, Professor Shemon. Yeah, beautiful school you have. I'm loving this office. And again, Professor Zach Shemon here teaches at UMKC, which stands for
University of Missouri, Kansas City Conservatory. Grew up.
Awesome, grew up. Good man.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, alrighty everyone, that concludes today's video. I hope you enjoyed this video. And again, if you'd like to sign up for this summer's Kansas City Saxophone Workshop, you can find a link in the description below for a $100 discount. Thank you, Professor Zach Shemon, and thank you all for 211,000 subscribers. Have a good day.